Hi everybody, I'm Bree the Plant Lady, checking in with a weekly garden tour. We are in the final days of autumn. Winter solstice is coming up on Thursday. It's my favorite day of the year. It's the true reason for the season because it does mark the actual season change. And of course, starting then we get to have increased day length, which is really what my whole life revolves around. Now, over the weekend, actually yesterday, we had I guess it was a nor'easter. However, it felt like a winter hurricane. It was super windy and we got 3 inches of much needed rain. The garden is finally wet like I'm used to it, where there's standing water and you have to wear rubber shoes because the ground is so saturated. And I am so relieved that we are entering the winter season with an appropriate amount of moisture in the ground. I'm able to put up a bunch of the hoses because I feel confident that all of the cottage garden seedlings are going to be able to be well established now that we've had some decent rainfall. I don't need to be running irrigation anymore, which I had never done until this year, to indicate how unusually dry it's been. And though I didn't accomplish anything in the garden since my last tour, my to-do list feels a lot more accessible. This week I have a pretty clear week and I am definitely going to dive in to a bunch of gardening projects, including getting all of this phlox chopped down and all of the chrysanthemums and all the stuff that's been properly is died back from recent hard frosts, and well, it's all starting to collapse. So there's no real reason to leave it because it's just falling over on itself anyway. So I'm really, really excited to make some progress in the garden in the coming days. I'm going to make the last few days of autumn really count. So without further ado, let me turn this camera around and we'll take a quick stroll. Here's spoiler alert, there's a whole bunch of camellias in bloom. Then you can see things are growing well. This bed is always a little funny because it's so shaded, but you can see here are poppies. That right here is California poppy. This is crimson clover that's germinating right here. So there's a nice mix of stuff. It looks like daffodils are actually starting to poke out of the ground already, which is a bit early. Really good ground plane coverage over here. However, the seedlings are getting large enough to be able to distinguish, and you can see right here when I'm holding, that's chickweed. And it looks a lot like the good stuff. Here are poppies right next to it. And then I see some other stuff that is not desirable. This is a little veronica. That's a weedy veronica. And you can see there's more of it here. So now the ground is like really nice and wet. It's an ideal time to get in here and clean some things out. If you can identify what everything is, this has kind of more of a scallop leaf. So that's how I can really distinguish it. And go ahead and get them pulled out while they're young. Makes everything easier long term. Of course, next to it here is California poppy. I'm thinking this is probably a bachelor button right here. I see another bachelor button up here. I see larkspur, but then I see this problem veronica. So you see, it's an ongoing process, identifying the good and the bad, getting rid of the bad. And if you do this maybe once a week, you'll be able to kind of take care of it. And the earlier you do it, the better your beds will be. And I'm really pleased to see how well the lupins are doing. You see, they've really gotten some nice size. And the fava beans back there are also growing really well. So really pleased with how this bed is looking, even though it's significantly smaller, all the seedlings, compared to out here where it's full sun. So you can see here at the feed tank bed, really dense ground cover of California poppies and mustards and kales. I did the spicy mixed greens in this bed. I also did some fava beans. I also did some lupins. And of course, the garlic edge is growing really well. And everything in this bed too is doing great. I can see these are all larkspur here. All of that. And this is a mustard. This is kale. That's crimson clover. But here, I can get that pulled out. This is a weedy lamium. So, you know, even when you have good ground plane coverage, there's still opportunity for non-desirable plants to establish. And again, getting them plucked out at this stage really is the best thing. Here, of course, is chickweed. Oh, I hate chickweed so much. And if another person tells me it's edible, I tell you what. So number one thing on my list is to get these bananas cut down and also remove the succulents from that planter and get that redone. And well, I just wanted to show you the deer are absolutely devouring all of the kales and things that are planted. I'm letting them eat it right in here. I'm pleased that they haven't come up and started disturbing these pots, although there's no reason that they shouldn't. So probably should just put in some protection. Maybe just some tomato cages might make a big difference. You can definitely see that in our recent last week or so, we've had some cold temperatures, not terribly cold, but cold enough to make the snapdragons stop blooming. That's no big deal. I was thinking about cutting these back just so that their energy would go vegetatively. Thing is, I don't want them to push out new growth because, you know, we have like 24, I think maybe tomorrow night. So I think I'm probably going to take the path of least resistance and not do anything. But number one priority, getting all of this cleared out, getting this pot emptied. All right, as we come around here, I just wanted to do a quick check. So you can see here is some cauliflower that has been getting devoured by the deer. I mean, likely this one's not going to recover. But I went ahead and put this tomato cage in. You see they've also been eating the wheat. They've been eating the violas. So they've even been coming over here, eating the violas out of this pot. So I'm just going to go ahead and be a bit more conscientious about making sure that I keep the stuff I want to have protected safe. And again, these broccolis are starting to come on. Not as fast as I'd like, but the cauliflowers are definitely making some progress. Not sure they'll actually be ready for a week from today, but nice to know I've got them. And believe it or not, I have actually been cooking with this hardy citrus. And you know what? It's not as bitter as I thought, or maybe my standards have changed. But I'm gonna make a bunch of seafood for holiday meals, and I'm gonna use this citrus as part of the flavoring for it. Remember, I think this is 1/4 grapefruit, 1/4 lemon, 1/2 Poncirus trifoliata. It's been totally hardy here. I got this from the J.C. Ralston Arboretum. Their plant is enormous, and you can see how it sets a ton of fruit very reliably every single year. It's a little bit hard to get to those top ones, but you know, a little goes a long way. I'm gonna harvest what I can. Now I am out here on the woodland edge. It is like standing water, which is good. It's time for that to happen. And as promised, I wanted to show you some of the camellias that are in bloom. I'll definitely be making some floating flower arrangements in honor of the winter solstice. And of course, this is the season that the camellias really start to shine. There's so little else that's in full bloom. And you just can't beat having some Chamilia japonicas in your garden. So this lovely white soft pink variety is Igawa 3 Seasons. I got this from Bobby Green. Actually, I got all of these plants here from Bobby Green in Fairhope, Alabama. And we have another really awesome one here. This is Sadara Haru O, which I never say correctly, but I love it. Look at that flower. It's very much like some of the Tama varieties with that white edge on the petal. So you can see the Woodland Swamp is once again holding water. And well, it's great to see the water flow. I'm motivated to get in here. You can see I've got a lot of winter weeds. Again, this is a type of japonica that is really not desirable. It will overcome everything. Of course, I've got Velcro weed, and that's of course this right here. You know, just a little time in here will make a big difference. You can see it's not that impressive to look at right now, but it is well planted. So we still have some ligustrums to get rid of along that edge. And then some camellias in bloom here. One of my friends commented when I posted this was a camellia that came with no name, and he thinks this might be Camellia vernalis Igawa. So that is the straight pink, whereas Igawa 3 Seasons is that softer light pink variety over there. And I think that is entirely possible. And again, these are going to be used in some amazing solstice floating arrangements. While I'm back here in the edge of the woodland, I wanted to show that the crimson candles is already starting to show some color. It's just very early. This is usually in full bloom for Valentine's Day. Nothing open yet, which is good because I'd like for them to not all flower so early. But you can see Roma resorta, another flower. This is bullnosing, which is caused by the temperatures. And again, this is usually one that blooms in March, but this year I've had several blooming in December. So every year is a little different, and the camellias are just as confused by the climate as the rest of us. And while I'm back here, I might as well also just show you, I'm really pleased that this Edgeworthia, which I still call Pipera, everything on it is small. The flowers are small, the stems are small, the leaves are small. This was looking really bad, but it's definitely perked up a lot. And I have this next to Edgeworthia Chrysantha cream sausage to do a comparison. So you see how large these flowers are. The leaves are bigger. Of course, it's, you know, they're deciduous, but you can see how big the stems on Edgeworthia Chrysantha get compared to Edgeworthia Pipera. So a really different beast. There's some discussion on whether it's a different species or not. I consider it to be a different species. I'm going to hold with it. That's how I learned it. And it just seems like there's too many physiological differences for them to be the same species. But glad to see they're in their bud stage. They're not starting to bloom. They shouldn't bloom this early. This is usually something that starts January, February. And it's one of the all-time favorite plants for the winter season. And of course, I love Edgeworthia, like irrationally love them. Honestly, I don't think I would ever want to live in a climate where they weren't hardy. And this big one, which, you know, planted itself in a pot, is my happiest, healthiest, largest. You can see it's like getting to be almost the height of the garage. And it has millions of flowers on it. Well, thousands of flowers at least. And this is the one that I primarily collect flowers off of to float in arrangements because it's in my work zone. This is not part of the garden. But what's really interesting is there is actually one bloom that's starting to show color. Look at that. I don't know if this is really a record for earliest flowers, but it is pretty early to be, you know, I think we're at like December 18th right now, and to have some Edgeworthy blooms open. So a lot of excitement to come. These winter active plants are definitely one of the reasons that I love gardening in the Southeast, and specifically in the Raleigh, North Carolina region. And, you know, we are now officially Zone 8. My last weekly garden tour, I kind of explained why I don't think that zone change matters very much. But this is definitely an example of a microclimate. This is a very warm zone, and it collects extra heat from, you know, the black building, and then it's just this tight spot. So maybe I should move my work zone, maybe one day, someday, and really take advantage of that nook. But for now, I'm just pleased to see that Edgeworthy is doing as well as it is. Well, south border is a big part of my to-do list, and mostly because I don't want the weeds to get too out of control. So I've got a lot of summer stuff to get rid of. Right now it's definitely too wet to use the lawnmower on any of this, but I'll probably come through and just cut stuff back by hand. But you can definitely see lots of stuff growing. Here's bachelor button. This is nigella. This is larkspur. But then here's lamium. And I know there's a bunch of Velcro weed in here. I don't have to look very hard to find it. But because the ground is so nice and wet, it's really the ideal time to come out and do this weeding. And it's nice and warm today with the sun on your shoulders, so I need to spend some quality time on my hands and knees, and I want to get this overseeded with giant Pephaver somniferum. And I'm so excited. I want to shout out to Mark from England, who watched some of my poppy videos and wrote to me and actually sent me a bunch of seeds of a strain of poppy that I have never grown, and that is what I'm going to be seeding into this bed. Not that it's going to really be an isolation plot, but in theory I'm going to have it somewhat segregated from all the rest. I am so excited to get these poppies sown and see how they look and what they grow out to be. And I'm so grateful for these friendships that have developed as a result of these YouTube videos. And well, I just really want to extend my gratitude to all of you for watching these videos and being engaged and sharing this gardening journey with me. It really means a lot. It means so much more than I ever would have anticipated, and it's definitely one of my main motivating factors for coming out and talking to my cell phone. Well, and the deer are definitely more active than ever, and they're eating basically anything that isn't protected. So I need to do a better job of getting everything protected. You know, if it's not protected, they're gonna eat it. You could see, like, just having this cattle fence panel here, these cabbages are safe, but these cabbages I don't have a cattle fence around, and you know, they've basically been eaten to the point of no return. So it's a simple process that I just need to go ahead and do it instead of talking about it. No, it is not forsythia. This is Jasminum nudiflorum, and yes, it is totally normal for it to start blooming now in mid-December. You know, it's kind of an unruly shrub. You see its habit here is just kind of a big mounding thing. But I love it. You can see how many buds are coming on it. It's actually a really nice plant to be able to cut the branches and force them into bloom inside. I often do that for holiday arrangements, and it's just such a cheerful plant to have in the garden, blooming right now. People always think it's forsythia. It is not. But definitely beware. You know, it's a plant that has a will to live, and it roots in It layers itself and it really will take up quite a lot of space. This gives you an idea of how big this was. This was a 1-gallon plant, you know, going on 13 years ago. But I do very little to manage it. I don't really do much pruning on it at all. And I consistently enjoy it every single winter. So I highly recommend including this, or maybe you want to have it in your neighbor's yard. You know, some plants are better to enjoy in someone else's yard, and this might be one of those. Well, I've accidentally made this garden tour really long, so I'm gonna go ahead and break it in 2 pieces. So I hope you'll tune in tomorrow to watch the second half of my weekly garden tour featuring everything that's growing out front. And I am wishing you all the very best as we lead up to the big holiday week. Thanks so much for watching, everybody.